Hello, dear friends. It's important to find a balance between skepticism and an open mind, without succumbing to paranoia or cynicism. Opinion piece. Freedom operation. Rapid changes. External cause. New consciousness. Fear creates resistance. Trust generates fluidity. Change is uncomfortable. Crisis and transformation. Quantum freedom network. Let's start. We are entering a period of rapid change. Freedom Operation is a multifaceted cosmic initiative designed to transition from a paradigm of scarcity to another one of abundance and sovereignty, according to Ismael Perez. Advanced technology plays a fundamental role in the transition to freedom operation with the release of Nikola Tesla's chips, which contain blueprints for wireless free energy and propulsion that could revolutionize travel and industry. To protect these advancements, a scientific asset protection program has been activated to safeguard the engineers and visionaries working on these projects from potential sabotage. Perez predicts a significant solar event, far exceeding the magnitude of the 1859 Carrington event. This solar eruption is expected to trigger 10 days of darkness, a temporary but massive blackout that would mark the end of dependence on centralized and fragile energy systems. This is not a time for fear, but for preparation. The coalition is ready to deploy the Quantum Freedom Grid. This system seeks to replace the outdated fossil fuel infrastructure with clean, abundant, and locally produced energy. By moving away from centralized control, the Quantum Freedom Grid represents a fundamental step toward true economic and energy freedom for everyone. Ismael Perez suggests that the superpowers are being guided by a coalition of wills to stabilize global systems and prevent the escalation of conflicts. The goal is to ensure a peaceful transition while humanity prepares to take its place as a space-faring civilization, transcending borders and integrating into a cosmic community. Crisis and transformation. Edgar Cayce prophesied that we are living through a period of crisis and transformation. The three simultaneous transformations would be terrestrial changes, system collapse, and spiritual awakening. After this period of rupture, a different version of society would emerge. In his view, the period between 2027 and 32 would be marked by attempts to manipulate fear through crises designed to halt the collective awakening. The first part of the change would be geological, with alterations to the earth and the natural environment. The second would be economic and institutional, with the awakening of traditional structures and the monetary system, presented as a process of collapse of all forms of organization. The third would be a great revelation or awakening of consciousness, in which many people would begin to perceive a different reality. Regarding spiritual awakening, Cayce describes it as a process of inner transformation that includes a dark night of the soul, a phase of detachment, and a subsequent integration of new perceptions. According to this approach, awakening would not be immediate or linear, but rather a sequence of crises, searching, emotional detoxification, and reconnection with a higher purpose. Cayce describes a collective movement of awareness in which humanity will begin to see hidden or denied realities more clearly. He links this process to a profound shift in consciousness, understood as a departure from the dominance of the ego and old ways of perceiving life. He also presents this awakening as a transition between crisis and renewal, in which the collapse of internal and external structures paves the way for a broader consciousness. In this approach, revelation is not just new information, but a transformation in how people relate to themselves, to others, and to the world. He adds that this dynamic would affect both the spiritual and the social, because the shift in the individual consciousness would ultimately be reflected in collective life. Therefore, the new consciousness appears associated with a new stage for humanity in which all the mental patterns are overcome and a different reality is projected. External chaos. He presents external chaos as part of a broader transition in which all the structures are dismantled while a new consciousness emerges. This new stage is characterized by forms of government and social organization that would gradually arise from within communities. Regarding terrestrial changes, a process of alteration of the environment and the physical order of the planet is described as a sign that it is ending, marking a historical stage. These changes appear linked to a purification or readjustment, both on the material and on the emotional and the spiritual planes. Regarding the collapse of the system, Case spoke of a fall of economic, social, and authority structures that would no longer sustain the previous reality. This collapse is presented not only as a crisis, but as a necessary phase of decomposition for new forms of organization to emerge. Change of values. Edgar Cayce presents economic change as the end of traditional monetary systems and a transition from traditional money to digital and programmable forms of exchange. In this vision, transfers would be faster, more traceable, and would operate continuously without depending so much on intermediary banks or national schedules. He also maintains that the international monetary system is entering a phase of fermentation and geopolitical dispute, driven by the digitalization of money, stable coins, and the search for alternatives to sanctions and state controls. Within this framework, the competition among different blocs to define the infrastructure of the money of the future is presented, while the dollar, the euro, and other currencies attempt to maintain their influence. Another part of the argument states that the end of the gold standard and the consolidation of fiat money left the system supported by institutional trust and monetary policy. Therefore, the end of traditional monetary systems doesn't mean the disappearance of money, but rather the gradual replacement of conventional banking with quantum, tokenized, and more automated financial networks. After 2032, a more digital, automated, and fragmented society could emerge, with greater dependence on technological infrastructures and less influence from traditional economic and political systems. In this scenario, daily life would be more mediated by benevolent artificial intelligence, decentralized networks, and the new forms of social organization that have arisen after prolonged crisis. He also describes a shift in values toward local resilience, social protection, and more flexible community models. The collapse or awakening of structures would open up space for mixed forms of government, with a greater role for digital, community-based, and decentralized initiatives. Disappearances. The Storm Rider explains why so many brilliant scientists are disappearing. Perhaps these scientists are under protective custody because of what they know. We are infinite beings of light created by the Source, and we are more powerful than any technology or microchip in our own divine spirit. And they are afraid that we, the demons, and they are afraid, the demons of the dark side, that we will discover this. This is what the missing scientist discovered and can prove. Trillions of ghost particles passed through your body, through the earth, faster than the speed of light. Human beings can capture neutrinos with their minds, and this allows them to have telepathic abilities to bend certain materials. This is why scientists are disappearing, because the dark side doesn't want anyone to know what the human mind can control technology, without implants, computerization, or anything that the government or any agency can control. David Wilcock. According to Kerry Cassidy, David Wilcock faked his death with the help of the White Hats. David had a cyber stalker who constantly harassed him. Cory Good suffered the same. Cory was so overwhelmed that he had to confess that all his stories about the secret space program were false and fabricated in order to free himself from this stalker. Cory's stories were true, but this stalker made him believe he was going to kill him. The same thing happened to David. He had knowledge of anti-gravity technology and asked the Justice Department for help because he couldn't get the local police to do anything. The department contacted Trump for assistance. He ordered security experts to fake his death and place him in protective custody, just like they did with Charlie Kirk. They planned this a year ago. To fake his death, they used a clone to make him cease to exist. Clones don't have souls. They are programmable biological robots. They programmed that clone to shoot itself in the face, disfiguring it and making it unrecognizable. Before the incident, they placed David in protective custody. The death threat was credible and probable. He agreed to be placed in protective custody. Human rights advocates told David they were going to fake his death. They never explained how they would do it. They never do. They just guaranteed that this would stop all the harassment. David is a hybrid who needs peace and protection from those evil people. They are not surprised. They are worried this could happen to Cory Good, Emery Smith, or Tony Rodriguez. They were all making videos. I'm sure they have all received threats. Alternative news. The world map is being redrawn, and the old guard is being ousted from power. The US is becoming to escort stranded ships out of the Strait of Hormuz. Markets should react positively to this news, according to Clandestine. According to Covermore, the truth about Roswell will soon be revealed. The Pleiadians call that race SEP, Zeta-EP, SEP. They are harmless explorers who crashed due to their own negligence, not human weapons. Their ships and bodies were recovered and studied for years. Lightsabers are real. Hacksmith has just built the world's first retractable plasma lightsaber, with a blade that reaches over 2000 degrees Celsius and cuts through steel like butter. It retracts just like the movies. May the Force be with you. You can't make steel with turbines or solar power. Germany has destroyed a large part of its coal and nuclear power plants. Energy prices have skyrocketed. German steel is expensive and so are German cars. Where do you think the chip steel for Chinese electric vehicles comes from? There are two QFS, a dark one that requires payment to access, and a divine one where you legitimately get everything that is yours without paying a cent for access. According to Empyrean, a real system linked to galactic law and 5D should give you what is rightfully yours, unconditionally. The true QFS doesn't require any hardware synchronization that you have to buy upfront. Everything is already duplicated and transferred. You just have to show up for your redemption appointment. Quantum computing just received a massive upgrade using frozen solid neon, not silicon or exotic superconductors. Most quantum computers need to be near absolute zero, but this is a game changer. Electrons are kept stable floating in solid neon, with low noise and high fidelity. Extreme cooling may no longer be necessary to build real quantum machines. The show is about to begin. Axios 4B reports that 2 US-flagged merchant ships crossed the Strait of Hormuz with a destroyer escort. These ships are not ordinary merchant vessels, but gold carriers linked to an alleged $38 billion fortune in physical value from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, presented as backing for a quantum financial system. Iran reportedly tried to prevent the transfer but failed, and the ship's passage is being presented as a delivery protected by a military escort. Admiral Brad Cooper has reportedly confirmed that Freedom Operation was not just about escorting ships, but about moving gold, whale, and the attack with missiles, drones, and assault boats. He also confirmed the existence of the QFS physical reverse ledger, that the system in singular would be locked, and that following this lock, Level 4B alerts would begin to send via banking portals and email. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.